ladies, gents, and non-binary mates, and welcome back to Beauty in the Bookcase. So I haven't done a writer's workshop in a really long time. I really only did like a couple of videos when I first started my channel, but as I've been working through my latest novel, I thought now would be a great time to kind of talk a little bit about my process as a writer. The last time I kind of talked about my book, I did a video called Creating My OCs in The Sims, and since then my book has turned into something completely different. So originally I was kind of going for like this paranormal romance kind of thing, and so I'd introduced you guys to Beckett and Eimhin, and while Beckett is still very much my main character, I have stripped the entire kind of fantasy paranormal concept out of my story. So essentially what happened was that as I was writing, I just started realizing that first of all, adding a fantasy element to, something that was already so focused on a specific place and time period was just gonna be a little convoluted. Like, I didn't think that I could do justice to both, like, setting up 1970s punk culture in England and creating this very specific, like, Celtic mythology world. So I got rid of the fairy kind of aspect of it all, and yeah, I wanted to, I guess, reintroduce you guys to my main characters. So I'm going to talk a little bit about them. We're going to go back into The Sims, and we're going to create 4 of like the big characters, and as I go through that, I will be kind of talking a little bit about kind of my process. So let's get started. Alright, so as I said, I'm keeping Beckett. So writing Beckett has been a kind of a frustrating process, I'm not gonna lie. He is my main character, but I feel like he's the one I am like least in tune with, if that makes sense. So I was feeling kind of very discouraged when I started writing this book because as I went into it, I just felt like I couldn't really get my characters' voices right. My original plan had been to go and watch some like interviews with big like punk groups of the time, which I did. So I watched interviews with the Clash and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and all that. But it became very clear very quickly that the persona you see on stage is very much a persona, and that's not to say that they were inauthentic in what they said and what they believed, but a lot of the times I'd be watching these interviews and I was fascinated by the fact that they were so normal. It was just like seeing your friends having a chat and kind of not taking things very seriously. So it's something very fun and light, but I guess it kind of made me rethink how I wanted these characters to come across. So after that, I was still stuck. I was like, I don't know how this guy would speak. I can't like access him in my mind. So I decided to go ahead and try out a character sheet, and I will leave the link below for the one that I used because I found it honestly really, really helpful. I mean, there were things that I was like, okay, I don't think I need this. I tried to fill out as much as I could though, because I was like, I want to make sure that, I don't know if things are going to come into play later. So, some of the physical attributes, I know I was a little bit more like, I don't need to be that detailed about it. But I really enjoyed being able to kind of start realizing what came before my story, and really then it really helped me like make Beckett a real person and kind of realize what he wants. However, that said, as I keep going through the story more and more, I'm still kind of feeling my way through him, and I've come to realize after a couple of like meetings with my writers groups that I think it's just because that's who Beckett is. I don't think he knows who he is, and that's going to be a big part of his story, right? It's going to be him figuring everything out. So it's been pretty frustrating dealing with him, but I think I love him so much. He's a very just kind-hearted person, but I think he's also somebody who's very anxious and intimidated by like the world as a whole. I don't know why I put that in quotation marks, but yeah, I think with Beckett, it's so much about him figuring out his own identity that it can feel, I don't know, it's just interesting writing him compared to other characters because he's very much kind of terrified by the world and scared to just kind of go through things and really experience them fully. You know, a big part of Beckett is he does kind of have a difficult relationship with his mom, who does suffer from substance abuse issues. So, you know, it's kind of fallen on him, like the responsibility of taking care of her, and he hasn't really had a chance to be a young person and enjoy life. So now he's kind of going out into the world for the first time, basically, by himself, and he's moved in with these like ragtag group of punks. So it's going to be really interesting seeing him kind of grow into his own person. A huge factor of who Beckett is going to be is very much tied to his friendship with Riker. Now, Riker was originally just going to be like a side character. He's the reason, though, that this original idea got completely gutted and became something else. I was working through my ideas, and I just met this guy, and I was just like, he can't just be tossed aside. Like, he can't just be like somebody who pops up a couple of times, because his voice was so clear in my head. And I always feel like I'm insane when I say that, because, you know, like, I'm aware that his voice is not actually there, but even as I was like filling out his character sheet, like, I could just feel thoughts coming through and like just responses from him, if that makes sense. He always felt very three-dimensional, like, from the second that I had him, and it's really hard. I've been having kind of trouble with my point of view, because it is in third person, but it's very much limited to Beckett, and it's so hard not to want to go into Riker's mind, because he's such like a personality, such a character. So, you know, I think, though, the reason these two are going to balance each other out is they both kind of come from very difficult home lives, very different situations, but they both kind of just want to take care of people. And I think the main difference between them is that while Beckett is still kind of trying to figure it out and unsure of himself and kind of struggling because he's starting to feel certain things that he's not sure about, Riker knows who he is, and I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that he didn't really have like a family, really. So he kind of just went on into the world at quite a young age and never really even gave it a second thought that the things that, you know, he's into might be like weird or whatever. He doesn't really care about people's opinions very much. However, you know, he's very much... One thing that I just have found fascinating, I guess, as I write him, is just the fact that he picks up on very tiny details as his way of like showing that he cares about other characters. So early on, there's a scene where he's having a conversation with Beckett, and they're kind of just having a very honest discussion about their upbringings and kind of like the things that really hurt them and have shaped them into the people that they are. And Beckett, in passing, mentions that when he and his brother were younger, you know, the one thing that they used to do to have fun, because they didn't have a lot of money, was Simon, Beckett's brother, would go into town and he would like perform little songs or stuff to get money, and then they'd get ice cream, because it wasn't something that they had all the time. And that scene kind of ends with Riker kind of just, after they've had this tough conversation, just being like, hey, let's go get ice cream, as his way of like acknowledging, like, I know this was really tough, but I've been listening and I care, and this is how I'm gonna show you. But it's definitely interesting because he is somebody who doesn't take things like very seriously most of the time, and I think that does work to his detriment at times. He might come off as insensitive or frustrating when Beckett's just trying to like express his emotions, and Riker's just kind of struggling to, because this, you know, Beckett comes and disrupts his life as well. So whereas Riker's kind of showing Beckett how to be like more fun and like a normal young man, you know, Beckett's showing Riker how to have emotions and how to have relationships that kind of go beyond the surface level into really getting to know a person. And it's quite intimidating for him, which is interesting because it's not something that he's had to deal with before. He's not a person who's afraid of most things. And So that brings us into Sid. Sid is technically, okay, so Sid is Riker's kind of sister. They were like in a foster home together. Haven't decided a last name for her, so if anyone has any ideas, my comments are open. Sid is an interesting character. I kind of fleshed out a little bit of her backstory just while doing Riker's character sheet. She's very much kind of like a happy-go-lucky kind of person, but she is a bit distant, I guess. Like she's very, when you read her, well, what I hope is that when you read her, she seems very kind of like happy and carefree and kind of almost airy and mystical to an extent, but it's all very calculated, and not in like a mean way, but just given the things that she has experienced, she does have like a tendency to just kind of keep people at bay, except for Riker, who's always kind of been her protector, and she, you know, that's her big brother. And I think a lot of her role, aside from, you know, kind of coming to terms with these things that she's experienced, I think a lot of what her role is going to be is kind of both learning to just kind of showing Riker that he doesn't need to always protect her, because she's not like, you know, like this fragile, vulnerable person that he still sees her as. But I think also part of her role is going to be just kind of checking Riker at times. He does tend to have a temper. He does tend to not, as I said, he doesn't always think things through before saying or acting. So I think a lot of her role and her presence in the story is going to be about her kind of being the voice of reason for him, and kind of teaching him as well how to deal with this brand new person which is Beckett, who's just kind of disrupted his kind of way of life for the past however many years. I'm still trying to figure out what her relationship is going to be with Beckett. I know it's not romantic at all, but I guess I'm trying to figure out where she fits into his story, because again, at the end of the day, it's his story, and like, you know, I'm still trying to not sway into Riker's life. So I don't know. I mean, they've all bonded very much over music, and I know that's going to be a huge part of it. But again, I don't want it to be something superficial where she just exists to like help Riker do things. You know, I want her to, now that I think about it, I mean, I think it would be interesting to just have her as a good, positive, non-romantic presence in Beckett's life. Because like I said, you know, he has a very complicated relationship with his mom, and I don't want Sid to be kind of like this vessel of like, I'm going to take you and I'm going to fix you. Because the whole point is that I want both of these, you know, both Beckett and Riker, I want them to sort their shit out by themselves. Like, I mean, together as in like realizing, hey, we're, you know, in the shitter together, but, you know, we're gonna fix ourselves before doing, you know, moving on into anything else. But I guess it would be interesting to have Sid kind of be this kind of more caring figure in his life, and I think she's a lot of what she might end up doing is helping Beckett kind of notice his own like anxiety patterns, not actively, so she won't be like putting on like, hey, you shouldn't do this, but I think a lot of their interactions are going to be very much Beckett realizing like, okay, I'm having these reactions that are not exactly the norm, so how do I fix that? And then there is this girl. She doesn't have a name either, if you want to give me ideas. All I know is that she's Irish. That's all I got for now. She was definitely intended to be just like a one-off character, and then I presented the story in one of my writers group, and they were like, no, we need to see her again. Like, she stole the scene. We love her. We need her. So here she is. So I definitely am trying to figure out her role as well. I know to an extent, she's going to have kind of a romantic aspect with Beckett. However, they're very different people. So, I have currently, Beckett, Riker, and Sid, they're all kind of part of this group of like punks who are kind of so disillusioned with the world and, trying to like fight the man. Well, not the man. You can't call it the man because that's a hippie thing and the punks will come for you. But, they're trying to tear down the establishment and be like, all this is messed up and it sucks and we want some change. Whereas I think this girl is also going to have a hand in, I guess, challenging Beckett's beliefs. So, he's again learning to be a young person again, and here comes this girl, and I don't want to call her a distraction because I definitely want her to have more depth than that, but I think she's very much going to be a bit of like safety for him. Like, he's gonna think, life can be a lot easier if I just don't get involved in all this mess going around, politically in England, and if I'm just like a normal young person who is in love with this girl and we're happy and that's all I have to worry about. But I don't know, the more I think about it, again, I definitely want to make sure that every single character has a purpose beyond just moving along the plot or like, fixing or saving anyone, because that's not what I'm trying to do. So it would be interesting, I guess, just to explore their relationship. It's definitely going to be a bit complicated because there are other factors at play that I'm not sure I want to discuss just yet, with, beyond my writers groups. But yeah, I mean, she's very much not a punk. she's very much into her disco and, the nightlife, and she's very much, again, kind of like very happy, very carefree. And I guess I'm trying to figure out where her dimension is gonna come, because I don't want her to just be this like flat character then whose entire purpose is to be cute and flirty. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be super, super interesting because she flusters Beckett a lot. Beckett hasn't had like a lot of experience in like the romantic department because he was always kind of taking care of his mom. So she definitely flusters him. She makes him very anxious, but she also kind of makes him want to be kind of more outgoing, and he's trying to like impress her and like figure out, I don't know, I guess figure out how to get this girl or what or who she's gonna be for him, which again is something I'm still trying to figure out. So I guess what I'm trying to say though in all of this is character sheets are great, and don't get discouraged from those first few pages, and if like you can't feel your character 100% the second you sit down to write them, because it is a process and it's quite challenging. But so yeah, I mean, I would definitely encourage you to just talk with friends or family or whoever, strangers on the internet if you want. Share these characters, because I think people can provide a lot of really interesting input. I mean, like I said, the story keeps changing because I keep talking to people and they'll say, well, what about this aspect, or what about this idea, or what if you did this, or it'd be interesting if this was, an element in there. So I think, we tend to be quite protective of our writing, and we want to be like, we're not going to change a single thing and it's just ours. But I think it's okay to let go a little bit of that control and mess around with different ideas and try different things, and don't be afraid of like breaking whatever idea you thought you were going to do, because I'm so excited. I'm so excited about what this book is becoming, and it's literally planets away from my original idea, but I'm really excited to see what it comes. And like I said, I'm going to try and keep you guys updated every month. Hopefully that'll keep me motivated, But yes, if there are any other things you'd like to know about my writing process or my book, make sure you let me know in the comments below. If you have any name ideas, please let me know so that I don't spend 17 hours looking through like name lists and being like, no. But yes, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, make sure to subscribe for more videos like these. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell so you know exactly when I upload next, and I will see you guys next time.